Okay, I'm back at my computer here, and Daniel chapter 8, I believe, provides some excellent information for evidence towards the pre-wrath rapture interpretation. Now, the first part of the chapter, which describes the conflict between the ram and the goat, these are all, both these characters are portrayed in the statue of chapter 2, and that's really not the main focus of what I'm here to talk about today. Be that as it may, there's the ram, which has 2 horns, very powerful in 4, and it is met with the goat, which has 1 horn. Now the horns in these caricatures represent nations, to get right to the point, and the vision talks about the battle between these two, and eventually the goat wins, knocks the horns off the ram, and the goat continues to become very powerful, and this is a military force. After the goat dies of separate causes, the prophecy tells us that 4 notable horns, or other forces, dictators, I guess you might even want to say, rise from them. Now, getting right to the interpretation, in verse 20, the ram which thou sawest had 2 horns are the kings of Media and Persia. Again, reflecting back on the chapter 2 and chapter 7 descriptions of the evil empires. And the goat is the king of Grecia, or in this case Alexander the Great. Now, what's amazing about this exactness, written hundreds of years before the occurrence of these battles, is that some interpreters, not me, would say that this aspect of Daniel was not written by Daniel so far ahead in time. But I mean, that's just the accuracy of prophecy in this case. And it gives further description that whereas 4 stood up for it from the goat, 4 kingdoms stand out, but not in his power. In other words, Alexander the Great at this point is gone. So that's the background of the chapter. But now let's get down to the part that we're interested in. And one of them came forth a little horn, verse 9, which waxed exceeding great toward the south and east and toward the pleasant land. The pleasant land in this case is Jerusalem. And historically, the Jews would look at this and say this is Antiochus Epiphanes. And I'm not saying it's not, I think it is. But as we go through this prophecy, you'll begin to see that the character here is greater than Antiochus Epiphanes. That did occur, and he did create havoc with the Jews. So this little horn, Antiochus Epiphanes, waxed great even to the host of heaven, and it cast down some of the hosts of the stars to the ground and stamped upon them. Now it's here where we begin to realize that this is a character that's greater than Antiochus Epiphanes. In fact, this looks like a dual prophecy reflecting on the future Antichrist. He magnified himself even to the prince of the host. In this case, the prince of the host would be heaven, and by him the daily sacrifice was taken away, and the place of his sanctuary was cast down. Now Antiochus did defile the sanctuary, but so will the future Antichrist. And again, these more elaborate descriptions make the little horn more applicable toward the future Antichrist, satanic empowered, whereas Antiochus certainly was evil, no doubt about it, and did desolate the temple. That is true. And a host was given him against the daily sacrifice by reason of transgression, and it cast down truth to the ground, and practiced and prospered. Then I heard one saint speaking, and another saint said unto that certain saint which spake, How long shall be the vision concerning the daily sacrifice and transgression of desolation? And here's the key verse that we want to look at. To give both the sanctuary and the host to be trodden underfoot. This is stating that how long will the sacrifice be taken away, and how long will the evil host be trodden underfoot. So there's a point where the evil character here is beaten down, and we're going to intersect those times, and that's the whole purpose of what we're doing here. We're intersecting the times from the time the daily sacrifice is taken away and the time that the evil one is beat down. In this case, we're talking about the wrath of God in the future context. And he said unto me, 2,300 days, then shall the sanctuary be cleansed. Historically, Antiochus, the time of the desecration during his time, did not come out to be exactly 2,300 days. Furthermore, if you look at the commentaries, which I agree with in this sense, and that is that this 2,300 days may more closely reflect the time Antiochus, but in the future Antichrist, that's too much time, because we know that the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel in chapter 9 for the future Antichrist is not going to be that long, and it occurs in the middle of the final 70th week of Daniel. That's a benchmark event. And so half of 7-year 360-day prophetic year is 1,260 days. So we're already looking at something much longer. And commentaries on this topic lean toward, which I agree, that the 2,300 days in this context refers to the morning and evening sacrifice. So we're looking at 1,150 days. Now I'm going to pull up another graphic here that'll better explain how this all comes together, because there's a lot of information here. And so here we have the last half of the 70th week, or 1,260 days, and we have the end of the 70th week. So from here to over here, 1,260 days. Then I put the 30 days of the bowl judgments outside the 70th week, which reflects the trumpet judgments. And at the end of the seventh trumpet declares the kingdom of earth toward Christ. Christ returns. And you have the bowl judgments, which are led by Christ. Now, in the trumpet judgments in Revelation are delivered by angels. Pre-wrath would call this the wrath of God. And I think that's very accurate. The first half of the 70th week are the seals, and those are authorized from Jesus in a scroll form to allow Satan a certain time of dominion on the earth. Okay? So we've got here listed from the abomination of desolation, or the middle of the week, and that's given in Daniel 9:27, and Jesus refers to this verse in the Gospels, Matthew 24, Mark 13, Luke 21. Through the trumpet judgments of Revelation, which is the wrath of God, is 1,260 days. So that goes from here to here. We have the end of the week at that point. The earth is reclaimed by Jesus in his return, and he commences the bowl judgments, which are short, quick, and destructive, and finally destroy the satanic. During this time, wrath of God, it is clear that the abomination of desolation, or the middle of the week, this period here includes the trumpet judgments. Now the trumpet judgments don't start here, they start here after the Great Tribulation and Rapture by pre-wrath. And the Great Tribulation is described by Jesus in the Gospel descriptions. It is the last time that Satan has full dominion, and his dominion is full. So the abomination of desolation occurs here, and so the temple is desolate. It is desecrated from here all the way to the end of the bowls, and then the temple becomes cleansed, and after 45 days it begins again. Now that's described more in Daniel chapter 12, but in Daniel 11 provides the length of the AOD, or the temple desecration, that begins in the middle of the 70th week. Let's take a quick look at 12:11. Let's shoot over here real quick. And from the time that the daily sacrifice shall be taken away, we know that to be the middle of the final week, and the abomination that makes desolate set up, there shall be 1,290 days, which is 30 days longer than half of the 70th week of Daniel. That places it outside the 70th week. So there's the evidence for the length of the desecration of the temple. Let's go back here to 8. So we've got that period of time. But now we need to know, when is the host trodden underfoot? Then this host is the evil host trodden underfoot. Let's go back to our graphic here. Through the seals and through the great tribulation, Satan has been given dominion by Jesus at this period. At the end of the great tribulation is the rapture, and this is described, evidenced by the celestial events from Joel 2:31, also described in Revelation as celestial events, and the pullout of the Christians at that point. After this point right here begins the trumpet judgments, and that is the wrath of God. So it is during the wrath of God that the evil host is trampled. Okay? So from here to the end of the bowl judgments is the time that intersects when the temple is desolate. From here to here it's desolate, and it's the time when the evil host is being trampled. This is the answer, and it fits pre-wrath very well. Now, I don't see how this would apply to pre-tribulation, because pre-tribulation considers the entire 70th week the wrath of God, and it clearly is not, because during the scrolls, that is a time where Satan is given authority. He's allowed dominion, but that's not the wrath of God. During the trumpets is the clear wrath of God, the wrath of God delivered by angels, and they carry it out. At the end of the seventh trumpet, Christ returns and reclaims the earth and brings final destruction to the satanic forces, and that's during the bowl judgments. Now, I know there's a lot of information here. In fact, it's difficult to say what you want to say, but not get too deep into the other topics, because there's a lot that can be added on to this. This is just one aspect. But let's finish out here. Verse 24. Here's the power of the Antichrist shall destroy the mighty and holy people. This is during the Great Tribulation, I would call, because this is when his power is greatest. Shall magnify himself in his heart. By peace shall destroy many. And he shall stand up against the prince of princes, but he shall be broken without hand. Now, this broken without hand is what really seals the deal of saying this is not Antiochus, because chapter 2 of Daniel describes the statue of all these evil empires destroyed by a rock that is not cut out by hand, but shatters the entire statue. So this is the end, and this is why you know that this is not talking about Antiochus, because but he shall be broken without hand, and that is a clear reference to chapter 2, for the destruction of the empire statue. So I hope this is helpful. This is not something that would be related to pre-tribulation, and I think it puts post-tribulation out of place. Tried to attempt to show that the entire 7-year period is wrath of God, and I don't think that's the case. And that's where this comes into play here, because the wrath of God is when the evil host is trodden underfoot in verse 13. So if you're trodden underfoot, you're not in charge of what's going on. Anyway, I appreciate you going through this with me. It's a difficult subject at first, but I think the evidence is there. And in the summary, what we're looking for is evidence where the sanctuary is desolate. That's pretty easy. But most people don't correlate this host to be trodden underfoot. What does that mean? And I think what we've shown here is that there's an intersection of time. And when you come back over here to our graphic, this intersection of time gives credence to the Great Tribulation by pre-wrath at this point.